Welcome back to Wickerson Studios. Michael Wickerson here. We are into the second part of this series of NumPy Basics, array and vectorized computation into Grasshopper for generating Rhino geometries. We are going to continue with the NumPy zeros array and producing that. And after doing that, the ones, we'll try and start to convert over other arrays with the zero-like function or the empty-like function. And I'll show you a couple of problems with that. But this is for people that actually want to start gaining more control and freedom within Rhino and geometry at a very fast and complex speed. But we have to start with the baby steps to start. So let's jump in and continue with our GitHub Copilot, which I recommend to everyone. You do realize I am generating geometries in the files that I'm not producing here, these blue data visualization geometries. But let's start off with here in the second file. We'll erase all the other ones as we go, but we're looking at creating ndarrays in hops for Grasshopper. And I think what I'm going to do is change this to exactly what I just said, which is NumPy Basics array and vectorized computational computation into Grasshopper for generating Rhino 3D geometries. And those can be as complex as you want it to be. So let's see if that fits in there nice. That's exactly the title. I think I'll take vectorized and we'll just put that down on its own line. I think now we'll have enough. And that's really what we're doing. And of course, that ties back to Python data manipulation and mudging. So back over to our window here. We've reset. We've taken off this running. We've cleared the terminal. And we may do some work in the terminal, but you'll certainly see this have effect in the terminal. We are going to create a NumPy zeros and NumPy ones array. We're going to, we could see an example of it. Let's just take a look at this in the terminal. There's the data NumPy 10, produce that data, and let's do array 3, data 3, NumPy array data 3, and we can find that dimension, we can find that shape, which returns 10, the type returns this. It's wonderful to see this beforehand, and let's do data 4 as NumPy ones and do exactly the same thing. So let's click through that. And that's just a wonderful way to script with GitHub Copilot, showing you the speed at which that happens, except we want to write this into a hops component, which we can run over in the hops component into the Grasshopper window. Nothing's different on these videos. And if you just want to get the files, just go over to wickersonstudios.com. There are 10 video tutorials to start, and there's one script, and you'll have the first 450 lines of code that go on here. But while we're waiting, let's just, before we start, let's run this with an F5. And you'll see that we basically produce that. The zeros array, you can tell that it's arrayed on a list because of the decimal. I think that's nice to know. You can see the types, you can see the the dimension, and there's how you would run it. However, we're not running a new script, so we will simply stop running that. And now we will wrap it into the next component. hops component, we'll start with, it's our first, we'll start with zeros. And we'll just give it a name and we'll number it if we have to debug it. And there's the 0 ones. Actually, we can just call this zeros. And create a NumPy array of zeros. Input. We don't need any of the IntelliSense because we're using Copilot. We get a hops array, which is just the first list, the second list, the third list. I'm not going on by 4x4 arrays, just staying with 3x3 to keep this example simple. You can make these as complex as you want as you develop your own hops functions to shoot on over in the wrapper. We're going to output those 3 again as data, but what can we do to that? We can pick the data type. We can also have, I don't think we did the shape. Maybe we should produce the shape let's do the shape as well. And the shape is going to be, if we look back to what we did in the last one, the shape was a list of numbers. They come out as strings. So we'll just choose the hop string of the shape and hopefully put a comma in there. There we go. Just thinking what we need. The 0 will bring in the 3 arrays. You will write the script and you're going to see we get the 3 lists put into an array. We have that array. It'll say that array type. It'll say the data type. The type of the array, and then the data type of the array as a string, but a data type array of a string is fine. The dimension of the array is fine as a string. You don't really have to have it as a string scripted over, but I'm going to leave the shape without it. I guess I don't really want to typeset. I'm going to take that off now and see if that does form a bug. I don't really need to have that because I'm already outputting it as a string, but I want to make it into a list. Let's see if this runs smooth enough. Did it produce a zeros array? It did not. So what I want to do is I don't really even need to input. This is where we're going to change over. Yeah, this is where we're going to actually start dictating the rows. So even though I type that all in, it's easy to do because it's going to run what you had before. But I want to go over and start changing this up a little bit. I want to do the rows as a list. I want to do the hops number as a list. I also want the count on these to be a hops integer. So this is always good to work through. Copy that. I want that other one to be an integer. We should be done with that. Not sure where I went there. I clicked too far up. Wow, did I ever click too far up? Just want to jump down here. Those will be our rows and our columns as an integer in. Our outputs will be the array as a list. We're going to guess that we're going to set the rows to, this is where we're going to jive up to 4 in our list. So 1 second, we're going to do hops number, hops number. And we're also going to have an array as a list within the list. So yeah, this is all things that I have to shift over. I'm glad I did a lot of testing before this because it'd be a lot of bugging on my part. We're going to do 1. We're going to do HS hops number. And we're going to, hopefully that will jump over to an array 2. We're going to do an array 3, HS array. I'm going to start basing all of our scripts in 4x4. What happened there? I went too far up. Jumped up. Let's go down here. Let's see if we can get a hops. HS hops number array 3. And let's see if it'll give us array 4. Nope. HS dot. So we haven't trained it yet, so you just have to do with this. Hops number. And that'll be that one. And now we can grab our dimension. Nope, now we trained it. It won't give us what we wanted. So now we want the hop string. It's just enough to know about coding to get this down. Data type. And actually, I don't think I want the data type. I think I want the dimension. N dimension of that as a list. And I want the shape of that. Will it give us the shape? There we go. And that's about all I want. So now I can start producing some zeros arrays. Now I am limited by 4 outputs to read it. You will be able to do anything you want within the terminal, but you have to decide on what size you kind of need for developing your geometries in Grasshopper. That's just what you have to do. Let's see if it comes up. Rows are integers, the columns are integers. You can set that a little more hard coded. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to jump up here. Oh boy, we got lots of wonderful stuff here. Let's go back here. Let's go here and make sure this is a integer, and it should give us the columns, int. There we go. And now I'm going to create that. I'm not going to do the 3D array. I'm going to create that zeros array with the rows and columns. It's going to print that. It'll give us the type. It'll give us the string. I don't think we need the n dimension as a string. It'll come out. We have the shape of that. And we should be able to see it come out as a list as 0, 1, 2, 3. And those will fit these outputs that we put in here. Now, mind you, I can change these Let's see if everything works with that string. I may have to typeset that string in there. So that's a little bit of debugging. That's a little bit of how you think about it. Let's grab all of our objects here. Let's grab these and copy them, put them down here, make sure we're not running into our old script. We do have a little loose tail end one here. I don't like the comment on the scribble tools. When they get too small, they really don't function well, but that's just a bug you have to get used to. And get rid of this one. We're going to call this the n-dimensional array object with Endian shape, and we're going to call this an n-dimensional array object, zeros array object. Zeros array object. And that should be enough with dimension and shape. So that's something to start. It will be 3 by 3, and actually I think we're going to go so far as 4 by 4. So we are going to jive this up, and we don't need any of this information, which is kind of interesting. You'll see exactly what's happening. We basically need a row count hard-coded in as 4, and we can change that. You'll see what happens. I think I'll just put that in as a slider so it's parametric. And then I also want to have my columns, which can be whatever I want it to be. We'll set that 4 by 4 array, and we will grab over here. And this is where things are starting to get exciting, at least maybe in your mind. It's a slow go. It's a long video series. It's clumsy and awkward. My first draft probably won't be any course on LinkedIn anytime soon. But what happened there, I didn't even put in my call to my function. Zeros. Oh, it's called zeros. Oh, well, we'll call it zeros. And we'll also do that as the call. With any luck, this works. I usually don't do that until I see if it works. Let's hard code in the rows. Let's hard code in the columns. See if it runs. And it debugs. It has a problem with interpreted as an integer. The list cannot be interpreted as integer. So we will probably go back up the integer. The list is integer. Where it faulted, I think it's because I did take off that string, but it shouldn't be an issue. Type the list 512 0 rows integer np zeros array rows and columns. Having trouble with that. Array din string. I'll put it back in because it worked up here, and I didn't do it on my past one, which kind of irritates me. Array dim. Let's just see, leaving this, if that's the debug issue. And whenever I start to debug things, now I can change this back to the word I want. I just want it to be zeros. I don't want it to be zeros. So I have a simpler call. Zeros, it might get me in trouble because that could be considered a keyword. Not sure. Let's type it, save it. Oh, we gotta stop it. Yeah, this is just how it goes, and probably not the best video tutorial as I go, but why not learn with this? It's live on Twitch. Let's see what happens. Copy, pull this one in, and paste forward, grab our zeros, and now we'll start to number it as we debug it. And let's see if we get any luck with the columns and with the rows and columns. Still have a problem with it. Cannot be interpreted as integer. So zeros, NumPy array, NumPy. Okay, let's go right back and take it word for word and how I had it working. If I have my hops integer come in, oh, that's exactly it. It's not going to get an item. I just need to read what I'm doing. And the list would be an item. Can't be a list. That might solve it, but if you're debugging in this is actually not bad to have. Let's call it a sample 2. And let's go over here to zeros call 02. And let's take this off. Let's go down here. I don't think I'll need that string on. I can go back because that wasn't the debug. We will hit Control S and F5. We'll get our internet protocol. We'll copy that. We'll run this down here. We'll double click. We'll move here and do our call function, which is now NumPy zeros underscore dash 02. And now it's not coming in as a list. You gotta know that param access, and it's working. So that's it. Now, if you look, what's happening down here is I can extend those numbers, and it's so long as I take this off, server and cache memory, you see that I can produce those numbers all the way down, and I can extend them past, not just in the column direction. I can actually do things like this and bring them up onto array side as a row, which is pretty exciting. So you get 2 rows, you get 3 rows, you've got 4 rows. And so that's kind of nice to think about. But when you get to 5, you're going to have trouble over here because you can't output all 5 of those. They won't be indicated right here by 0, 1, 2, 3. And that is the problem we're running into with array list to tree. So I just have to deal with that. So I'm going to hard code it in as 4 rows. We're going to stay with the 4 rows. We got to watch our param access, which is why we should have read the bug code, and it would have told me exactly that. And now we can left click, grab our call. Took us a couple times the bug, 0, 0, down to zeros, down to zeros 2. And there's our call number. And now we can take our data and run it into our entwine to maintain our data structure for data trees in Grasshopper. We can see that we have a dimension that's working well as 2, and we can see we have a shape of 4 by 4. And of course you can see that change as we go, 4 by 6, 4 by whatever. And you see it updating over there. And so now with this data, what would you do with your zeros column? And now if you're thinking about cleaning data, that can be very exciting. So I'm just going to leave that dispatch in there. I'm not going to do anything geometric with a zeros column, but I think that's pretty fun to think about generating those columns. And like I said, we're going to get into zeros like. Now, while we're at it, I'm just going to take this setup and I'm going to say example of, I could do range, but I'm going to do ones. And we already did that, array, and immediately write this into a hops component. Let's take this off and let's make sure it writes from memory. Let's see if we get lucky. Hops component, ones, we can do that. And let's not make a mistake with ones and see if that gets lucky. Ones, create a NumPy array of ones, inputs, in comes the rows, in comes the columns as an item. That's it. Output, and you're going to get your 1, 2, 3, 4. So you're limited in any development when you do this. There's 4. I should get my dimensions, and I should get my string. And that's it. That's it. And we'll get our definition. It will produce a ones row and column array, shapes and everything, and we're done. And that's it. And now we'll get into the empties, and you'll see a little kind of bugs that happen. So jumping in here, turn it off. This should be fairly easy. Oh, and one other thing we can do is we can right click and grab our call name. We can also make it for the next person who has trouble running this, because there is a problem with running off of another server that you have to reset things. There's a few bugs in that. People will find that out, and I've shown a few examples of that. If I ever tried to get this up and running, and again, I have to cut and paste the name of this and pull down a new node. So you copy that, and then you pull down a new node, and you sometimes have to go from scratch and build a totally new one to run. And that's about all you have to do. So that's just a simple little thing. Let's grab all these. Let's copy this, pull it down here, go into here, change this zeros to ones. Sorry, this took a little long, but it's morning, or it's not morning. It's just what it is. We should be able to grab a component and grab our, where is it? Where's our call number? Oh, I was playing around too much. Oh, I haven't even run it yet. Let's grab our IP. Let's go in here, put it in, / call our NumPy ones. And you can produce your own ones arrays to drive data. Really nice and really fast. And now we should be able to drop that in, 4, 2, and 4 by 4. That's it. and then grab your name call, NumPy ones. And for the next person, just to figure out how to run these things, it's this simple once you get going. Now I do these a couple times, just a couple a day. I'm in no rush. I'm just about to start summer break, so I'm gonna have tons of time to develop these and make some samples. But there's a ones array and there is a other array that's working just fine. So what will we do after this? We can turn this off. We can make sure we're saving this as the stable Copilot in the stable diffusion 02 Grasshopper script. You'll see we're well into 550 lines of code, and we're going to go through the ones, the zeros, and we're going to go into the a range component, which is literally a range component. And you can think about this, but it's another very nice tool. This one's not running, and here's an example of I have another server to look at. Of course, I'm looking at another screen you can't see. We're going to go to the NumPy a range component, and you're going to see how that one works as well. And that's pretty simple. But I'm going to take a little break, put this one up as a video, even though it's a little longer and shows a little bit of debugging. And it's not that smooth, but it does show you the working through. Probably have to fine tune and cut and edit all these videos in the end, or try it again as a video series directly. But it's nice to clean up my older script by doing this a second time. So stop recording.